Hello friends, millions of cattle, one system, no pause button. People like to talk about beef as food, steaks, burgers, barbecue. But in Brazil, beef isn't food first. It's a machine. A machine that only works if it never slows down. Because the moment it does, someone doesn't just lose money, they disappear. Brazil is the world's second largest producer and exporter of beef. That fact gets repeated so often it sounds harmless, almost proud. What usually gets left out is what it takes to hold that position. Across the country, thousands of processing factories operate every day. Most people imagine them as factories, but a few of them aren't factories at all. They're meat mills. A factory can pause and recover. A mill pauses and goes bankrupt. Places where volume replaces margin and survival depends on one brutal rule: process more animals tomorrow than you did today, or be replaced by someone who will. Tonight, we're counting down 5 of the largest processing operations in Brazil. Not to celebrate them, not to condemn them, just to understand how big this system really is and what it demands from anyone who wants to stay inside it. At the quieter edge of Brazil's beef industry, there are companies built on history rather than headlines, names that existed long before global exports dominated the conversation. Prima Foods sits in that space. Prima Foods didn't start as a monster. It began in 1949, back when meatpacking in Brazil was still personal, family-owned, relationship-driven. Reputation mattered. For decades, Prima, then known as Mataboy, built its name quietly. Quality over noise, tradition over speed. But tradition doesn't scale well. At some point, the market stopped asking how good your beef was and started asking how fast you could deliver it and to whom.
Make sure the grind is fine on this batch.
Yes, I'm almost done sharpening the blade.
Prima rebranded, merged, changed ownership. Jose Batista Jr., known as Junior Freeboy, took control. Yes, that Batista family. The same bloodline. Officially, Prima and JBS have no direct relationship. On paper, they're separate. In reality, they exist in the same gravitational field. Prima operates multiple units across Brazil, plants that process hundreds of cattle per day, every day, without headline. That's the quiet danger zone of this industry. You're big enough to feel global pressure, but not big enough to bend it. At this level, one export market tightening standards, one buyer delaying payment, 1 week of rising feed costs, and suddenly, legacy stops mattering. Move slightly higher, growth becomes the story. Fergal expanded fast, placing its operations where logistics and exports made sense. Founded in the early 1000s, 990s, Frigol expanded aggressively across Sao Paulo and Pará. It pushed into international markets in more than 60 countries, multiple continents. On the surface, it looks like a textbook growth story. Frigol is often described as one of Brazil's fastest-growing meat processors. New plants, new markets, new volume. The numbers look impressive. Process volumes climbing, profits surging. But rapid growth in meatpacking doesn't create freedom, it creates obligation. Every expansion raises the minimum speed the system demands from you. That kind of growth doesn't ask if demand will stay strong, it assumes it. And assumptions are dangerous in a business where buyers can disappear overnight. Regulations can change mid-contract, and one market, China, can quietly control your oxygen supply. When exports make up most of your volume, diversification isn't a strategy, it's a survival skill.
Confirm the cancellation from China?
Yes, all 3 containers are refused. We need to reroute immediately.
Frigol built its success on exports, especially one buyer that now dominates its volume. That works until it...
We need to double-check the inventory for the global meats shipment. They account for 92% of the volume this quarter.
At another level, companies stop growing organically. They consolidate. Marfrig didn't wait for the market to decide its fate. I bought a scale instead. Dozens of mid-sized processing factories were folded into one structure, not because they were failing, but because they would fail alone. This wasn't about branding, it was about volume smoothing. When margins are thin, scale becomes a weapon. Shared logistics, centralized procurement, standardized processes. Exports were built into Marfrig's DNA from day one. While others depended on domestic demand, Marfrig looked outward. Europe, Asia, North America. As international appetite for Brazilian beef exploded, Marfrig was already positioned to feed it. When Marfrig reached tens of thousands of cattle per day, slowing down stopped being an option. It became a threat. Buying survival at a price. Minerva didn't wait. While others debated, Minerva acted. In a single move, the company acquired 16 processing factories previously owned by Marfrig, plants across Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, and even a sheep facility in Chile. The price tag was massive. The regulatory process is slow and tense, but when the deal cleared, Minerva didn't just grow, it jumped. Overnight, process capacity surged, export power consolidated. Minerva positioned itself as the dominant exporter in South America, second only to one name. This wasn't expansion, it was insurance. Because in this industry, if you don't get bigger fast enough, someone else buys the future before you do. But debt doesn't care about ambition. And larger capacity only helps if the world keeps buying. Minerva placed its bet. Now it has to keep winning every day. And then there is the company the system bends around. JBS isn't just the largest meatpacking company in Brazil. It's the largest agribusiness company in the country and the largest meat producer on Earth. An estimated 30% of all cattle processed in Brazil pass through JBS facilities. Think about that. For every 10 cattle processed nationwide, 3 belong to one system. Globally, JBS operates at a scale most competitors can't even model. Tens of thousands of cattle per day, hundreds of thousands of pigs, millions of birds. At this scale, the rules change. JBS doesn't react to markets. Markets react to JBS. When JBS expands a plant, entire regions feel it. When it negotiates prices, suppliers adjust. When it invests, competitors react or vanish. The Campo Grande expansion alone doubled capacity after a massive investment, not because demand required it immediately, but because being ready matters more than being careful. JBS has faced scandals, scrutiny, questions that never fully go away. And yet it remains because, in systems this large, morality is quieter than logistics. None of these companies set out to build a machine like this. They responded. They adapted. They scaled because not scaling meant dying. In Brazil's beef industry, success doesn't come from being right, or ethical, or even efficient. It comes from lasting longer than the pressure. The system doesn't ask who's best. It asks who can absorb the most risk for the longest time without breaking. And the only question left is, who can afford to lose last?